we're going to talk about the 990. I had mentioned earlier that we are a tax exempt organization, so we don't have to pay income tax, but we do have to file a report every year to the IRS, so they kind of know what we're doing. So that's kind of my first slide is what is the purpose? Why do we have to do the 990s? So there are other people who might want access to the information that's provided on the forms. So we're basically just giving information to the IRS about what our income and expenses were for the year. Now, if you don't file each year, they can come back and fine you. I have heard of a couple of schools who failed to file and they came back with like $1,500 in fines. So be sure you file. If you somehow miss the deadline, file for an extension, but you know, communicate with the IRS, make sure they are aware of what's going on with you guys. Do not forget to do this. We also have this information out for the public and donors, so they know what our organization is about, what our financial situation is, especially if people are wanting to donate to us. That gives them information about us. And for our members to know, you know, what our financial situation was for the year. So again, potential donors might look at our 990 to kind of see, you know, do we look like a good organization who's doing things that would be positive to donate to? People wanting to do research about our organization and provide information to others that may, you know, maybe help us get more membership. Media, you know, they want to do a story about PTA and our tax exempt status or things that we're doing, might, you know, look at that information to kind of see, you know, what kind of money are we generating? What kind of things are we doing with that? And then there are the negative, the naysayers who, you know, like, why are they tax exempt? Why do they not have to pay taxes? So they might, you know, look at those forms and see what's going on there. So that's public information that's out there. So the IRS requirements, because we are a 501c3 tax exempt organization, we have to file a report every year. It's not really a tax return, as you see, it's informational, it's more of a report. And then you can see the penalties, the values. If you miss 1 year, they'll charge you a late fee, and they may charge you taxes. If you, for 3 years in a row, haven't filed, then you will have your tax exempt status revoked. So you really want to be sure that you're taking care of this. And again, filing date due by November 15th, 2021. So put that on your calendar, treasurers. That's a big red. Be sure it's done. You can do it well before. You can do it as soon as your audit is done. And actually, that's you have all the information that you need for your tax filing at that point. Finish the audit. Go ahead and file your taxes, and you're done, and you don't have to worry about it. But at the latest, November 15th, 2021. Okay, so how to determine which form to file. And it's all based on your gross receipts. So not your net, you know, not the difference between what you made and what you spent, but all the money that you collected for the year. So, and it's not just for that, you have to be careful because you're looking at your 3-year average. So especially during this COVID times, a lot of people saw big differences in the amount of funding that they acquired. So if you're running, you know, typically $60,000, $70,000, that sounds really high, but you know, if your income is normally $60,000, $70,000 a year, but then last year because of COVID, you weren't able to do so it dropped down to like 25, that's still going to average out over 50 over the 3 years. So you have to look 2 years back plus the year that you're filing for, average that. And if it's over 50, you're still going to have to do the EZ. So if you can't just look at this year and say, oh, we were really low in income, so we're only going to do the postcard this year. That's not how it works. 3 years average. So you go back to the 2 previous years plus your income for this year. So if your gross receipts are less than 50,000, you only have to do the e-postcard. It's very simple. You go to the site, you click the this, and this, and they'll send you a little receipt that they received it. No big deal. If your gross receipts are more than 50,000 but less than 200,000, then you have to do the 990 EZ. And you can complete that yourself as a volunteer, or some organizations pay an accountant who's familiar with tax exempt organizations, have them complete that, because it says easy. It's not that easy. It's fairly comprehensive. And then I don't know that any of our units in this area meet this, have gross receipts of more than $200,000 a year, but then you'd have to do a full form. So, I think the majority of us are typically in that middle range, the 990 EZ. I mean, it can be done. You can do it by hand, but if you have the money to pay $250, $300 for the accountant to do it, it might be money well budgeted. Okay, so here's an example of determining your gross receipts for the 3-year period. So we have an example. In 1819, this PTA had gross income of 75,000, but in the next 2 years, you see a marked decrease in their income. So, looking to file for 2021, they're thinking, oh, we only did 42,000, we can do the e-postcard. But when you average those 3 years, it still averages out to 52,000. So you still need to do the 990 EZ. So you should have, the treasurer should pass along from year to year the tax returns. So you should be able to go back to your 2 years previous to get the, what the gross receipts were that were filed, to do that math, to determine that. Okay, so the IRS definition of gross receipts is the total amount the organization receives from all sources during the fiscal year, without subtracting any costs or expenses. The only thing that you subtract out from that is the $350 per membership that you send to the state, because that's not really your money. That's not income to you. You just kind of hold that income for a moment and then pass it on to state, Florida PTA. So you'll see on your, when you do your audit, they have a spot for you to determine that amount, how much you're going to take out, what you need to report your membership dues. So, be careful following that. So you can take that out of your gross receipts. So it's all the money that you brought in less what you send to state and national for dues. Which, if you have lots of members, that's a pretty big chunk you can subtract out, depending upon what you charge for your memberships. Okay, unrelated business income. This one kind of comes up because it actually talking with the, if you went to the vendor fair, these, especially if it's like a spirit night or something like that, sometimes unrelated business income comes up in these situations. So basically what it is when you do like a spirit night, say you do Chipotle, and Chipotle does most of the work on that spirit night, like there's all the information, they're doing all the work. You guys don't really do the work to set it up. That's, since they're doing the work, that's unrelated business income for us, because it's not a PTA thing that we're doing ourselves. So law requires that we report that if it's collectively $1,000, and there's a form, that 990T, and you have to pay taxes on that. So when you set these things up, try to make sure that your organization is doing like all the advertising, getting the flyers and stuff out. You might want to set up some kind of raffle or giveaway or something related to that night. So make sure that you guys, I believe it's about 80% of the work for it not to be UBI. Okay, so this gives a little breakdown of what that means. So activity constitutes a trade or business, which we'll talk about school store because a lot of us do school stores. So as we're doing all the work, it doesn't really count. Trade or business is not substantially related to the exercise or performance of the organization's exempt purpose. So somehow school store works their way around this. Let me see what I'm saying. Okay, so like your basic fundraisers, like when you do the Yankee candles or the wrapping paper, or you know what you do it once a year, that's definitely not considered UBI. It's a one-time thing. It's not a year. You know, we do it consistently throughout the year. And when the work is substantially conducted by volunteers, so we're doing the work, we're making the money. It's not someone's making the money for us. See, there we go. So exceptions: school store run by PTA volunteers, box tops do not count, sales of donated merchandise, that kind of thing. So we got some pretty good leeway. You just, you know, it's a fine line sometimes. So be careful on spirit nights or those types of things where you're working outside of your organization to raise funds. All right, so this was actually kind of new from last year. So hopefully you guys are aware of some of these changes already. I think we're already familiar with this. They've changed the bylaws so that we can hold electronic general meetings. And I know at that time we were still supposed to do one person face to face, but they changed that again. So we were able to do them all electronically or virtually this year. You can set up a GoFundMe account. I would be very careful doing that. As you can see, it needs to be part of the budget. It needs to be part of the general membership. And it needs to be for a specific cause or item. Like if you're you wanting to buy technology for the school, you want to, you know, get some computers or something. So it has to be very specific and make sure you get approval from your membership before you try to do it. Me, I try to keep everything simple. You know, I try not to get into crazy things if I can help avoid it. All right, so the big one was gift cards this year. So, you know, for years and years and years, they said, no, you can't buy gift cards. No, you can't buy gift cards. So the legal team kind of reviewed that with National PTA's stance on things. And they came back and told us this year that, yes, we can purchase gift cards, but there are some qualifications to that. And the first one kind of gets a little confusing, I think, to people. So it says an individual is eligible to receive only 2 gift cards per fiscal year with a max value of $25 for each gift card, which doesn't mean you can only buy 2 $25 gift cards. What it means is if, like, you're giving them out to teachers for some reason or students as prizes, that specific teacher couldn't get more than 2 gift cards from you for more than a total of $50. So no gift card should be more than $25. Then gift cards are the same as cash. But think about it, if someone got hold of your gift card, they can go spend it just like cash. So you need to be very careful about managing them. I would have the treasurer keep them locked up somewhere safe, just like you keep your cash box locked up somewhere safe. And you need to log them, just their assets, just like your money, just like any merchandise or anything you have. It's an asset, so it has a value to our organization. So you need a gift card log and a process you work out with your board on how they are purchased, how they are dispersed. So I think the next one is a sample. So here's a sample gift card log. So, you know, when was it purchased?
Do you know your sister has a Rainbow Classic thing at like 3:30?
She was asking me a question. Who purchased it? Where, you know, where you got it? Is the Target gift card? The number, you know, anything you need to track that card, and then who you gave it to, when you gave it to, what
I'm
was
sorry,
the budget
Mary.
line, what was the purpose?
Hey, Becky, can you mute yourself? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
I know that's how this year has gone. I mean, we're either muted and trying to talk or forgetting that.
I'm so sorry, guys.
So yeah,
I didn't
so you
realize
need,
it.
no worries, no worries. Be sure you have a log, any of the gift cards that come in, and these are even for donated. If somebody donates gift cards, it needs to be logged and recorded. It needs to be kept track of. Gift certificates. If you go to a restaurant and they give you gift certificates that you can, you know, use for giveaways, all of that needs to be recorded and accounted for so that, you know, and as treasurer, that's kind of a CYA thing, you know, so no one can come back and say, well, whatever happened to the Walmart gift cards that so-and-so gave us? So, you know, it's to your benefit to make sure everything is tracked and logged and documented so that there's never a question about how it was spent, what happened to it, that kind of thing. So you need to be very careful with gift cards because those are part of the reason we weren't allowed to use them for so long. Is it's fairly simple to misuse them or have, you know, have loss from them because they could be stolen and used easily and hard to track. So you need to be very careful when dealing with the gift cards. And I don't know that there's questions and questions. And I'm kind of going fast so you guys can leave. Okay, so there's some resources. We talked earlier about the kit of materials, and I shared the link for you for the current one. As a new treasurer, Florida PTA will be sending out, you know, the updated kit of materials, and typically they send that out after leadership conference, so that won't be till mid-July or so. I will not be the treasurer. Emily will be the new treasurer for next year, but the email address is the same. If you have any questions or need help or, you know, anything, you can reach out to her at treasurer@sccpta.com. And our current Florida PTA treasurer, you can reach too. I should have added, but our compliance coordinator, Kim Anmansky, she's always a good contact for things, especially dealing with compliance, like filing your taxes, sending in your audit, that kind of thing. She's a good contact for, you know, sometimes the day-to-day questions. So if you guys want, since we have time, I have my presentation, I believe, from Audit Palooza. So if you want to talk a little more about audits, I can get that information up. So you guys let me know what you want to do.
Can you go over what e-commerce sites we can use?
Okay, that's a good question. All right, let me stop sharing this and let's go get out of this. Okay, I'm pretty sure that most of them you can use. Like I say, we use Square. And mostly at that point, it's because we decided this probably about 7 or 8 years ago to start trying, because we wanted to be able to take credit cards at like scheduled pickup and stuff, because you know, you get those people say, well, I don't have cash on me, or I didn't bring my checkbook, but everyone had their debit and credit cards. So we started this, you know, that's when we started doing that. So, you know, like PayPal, any of those you can use. I think, let me go. Give me 1 second here. And let's see what Florida PTA says about it. Because I think on their new form, it looks like they're showing So here we go. And I know there's so many more out there now, but you can do like Venmo, you can do like Zelle. You just have to keep in mind, especially as a treasurer, that every different option you add is something else that you're going to have to track and keep track of. So I prefer to keep it simple. So, you know, we use at the county level, we use the member hub. So everything that comes that we get paid through electronically comes through member hub through the stripes. And, you know, they give weekly deposit reports that you can print out to add to your records. But yeah, so pretty much anything you can use now. Debit cards, credit cards. I recommend you don't have a bunch of them. Use at our bank, we have the president has one and I have one. And if anyone needs to use it, then they have, you know, there's a process to go through permission to get them. But again, keep it simple because all the options you have, you're going to have to track. So it gets record keeping, it can get a little crazy. They give some guidelines on how to keep track of it, but they don't really limit on who you can use. So, you know, if you like PayPal or you like, I'm not even familiar with all of them that are out there because I'm kind of a little older on that. But yeah, you want to find the one that's going to give you the best deal with the lowest, you know, fees and stuff. So it's worth it to shop around.
When finding people to be on the audit committee, what are the membership requirements?
Okay, there are no real membership requirements. The main requirement is that they cannot be signers on the account. So if you were able to sign checks this year, you can't be on there. Since, you know, since we preach transparency, financial transparency, they don't have to be on the board. You would probably prefer it's a member, but they don't have to be. Because you're basically wanting people kind of outside your organization looking at what you did, you know, to make sure everything was done properly and appropriately. So other than they can't have had any involvement with the account, anyone can really be on the audit committee. You can actually, you can even hire an outside auditor to do it, but you know, who wants to spend that money? It's not really that hard to do as a group. And you should have three audit committee, at least 3 audit committee members. And the treasurer is not part of the treasurer who's being audited is not part of the committee, but they need to be available during the audit to answer questions in case questions come up. And that doesn't have to be physically available, but at least by phone, so that if the committee has questions, they can reach out to you, because you know, you don't want them to have to spend several days doing this. Typically it's a couple-hour process to get it done.
Mary, I'm so sorry. You were answering my question, and I'm here at the vet with my daughter's lizard, and they came to my car to talk to me right as you were answering the question. So, like, we only have 3 board members, and we're all the signers on the account. So my question is, like, if we get it could be anyone who's a member. Do they have to be a member of the PTA to audit?
No, they don't have to be a member.
So if I just find 3 people that are willing to do it, that's all that it needs?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry.
No problem. Not at
Okay.
all.
All right. Thank you.
If you guys have more audit questions, I can pull up my audit thing, or if for those of you who are new and just coming into this, if you have any more questions about, you know, the best, you know, record keeping, that kind of stuff, whatever, we'll kind of open it up at this point to what you guys, I know it can be very overwhelming. Treasurer is a big responsibility, mostly because you're responsible for funds that aren't yours and making sure they're accurately reported and responsibly used. And you do have to be able to be a no person. Sometimes you have to tell people no. It doesn't come up very often, but again, with the craziness of working through COVID this year, the finances on a lot of units were not the same as it was. So like when we did our budget planning, and I knew we weren't going to make as much money as we normally do, we kept the budget fairly close to what we normally do, you know, being optimistic that we would have money there, but we were very, you know, cautious about spending, making decisions about spending based on what we were making. So there were, like, we didn't open up our teacher grants until into the second half of the year because we did not have the income to do that. So, you know, you have to, you're responsible for that. And sometimes you're going to have to say, no, we're not able to do that right now because we just don't have the funds. And you have to keep in mind things that are coming up too, you know, like when we were for county, we were planning on how many leadership convention registrations we could pay. So, you know, I'm telling them, well, this is what we have now. We still have awards that we're going to be spending, you know, so you have to be able to let your board know what you really can and can't do. What's the real picture? Not the budget is the plan, and you hope that's the way the plan goes. But as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men, you know, most things don't always go as planned. So you need to try to keep up with things. Don't get too far behind on your record keeping. You know, you always have that deadline of, I'm going to have to make a report at the monthly meeting. So, you know, at some point before that, you're going to have to sit down and make sure everything's entered and reconciled and accounted for your monthly report. But just to save yourself pulling out your hair, I would try to weekly, at least weekly, make sure everything's getting in to your ledger and stuff like that, so that you're not scrambling and spending 5 hours trying to make sure everything's ready to go for the monthly report. And if for some reason you are not able to attend the meeting, you should still send your report. That's one of the classes that they offered at some point at state convention, was how to tell if you're in trouble financially. You know, how can you tell that maybe your treasurer isn't doing their job? And one of those is, you know, not having monthly reports, not coming to meetings, not being able to get in touch with them. So, you know, be sure you have your reports each month and up to date, ready to go. And I mean, it's important for your board to know where you are financially, so you know realistically what you can do and what you can't do, because you don't want to overextend yourself. Let's see, I'll stop sharing that unless you guys are just really loving the kit of materials. And I talked a little bit in the earlier session about setting boundaries and guidelines. It's very important when you have, especially that very first board meeting, maybe when everyone's meeting, to kind of lay that out for them. Like, these are my expectations for how to handle reimbursements, how to get deposits to me, that kind of thing. You need to set that up front with your board so that they're not taking advantage of your time. Okay, just a couple of things I'm thinking of off the top of my head. When you're making purchases, we know we are a tax exempt organization. That means in certain circumstances we don't have to pay tax, but there are circumstances where we do. If you are making a purchase for something that you plan to resell, so like maybe you're buying t-shirts to sell as spirit wear, you have to pay tax on that. Anytime you make a purchase where you're going to resell the item, like treats for your school store, anything like that, you have to pay sales tax. Sales tax has to go at some point. And rather than you trying to worry about paying sales tax or charging sales tax on yours and then submitting it, we pay it up front to the purchase where we're purchasing. Now, if you're buying food for your welcome back breakfast, that's not something you're selling. So that is tax exempt. So anything you buy to run your programs that you're giving away, that kind of thing, you don't have to pay tax on. But if you're going to resell, you must pay tax. Using the tax exempt certificate, you can only use it with PTA payments. Michelle can't go purchase something at Publix for the breakfast, use her check or credit card, and use our tax exempt certificate. It is not Michelle's tax exempt certificate. It is whatever her PTA's tax. So if you're going to use your tax exempt certificate, it needs to be a PTA check or your PTA debit or credit card, because we are the ones that hold the certificate, not our individual things. So sometimes you want to do some planning ahead on purchases so that you are able to use a PTA check. Like if you're doing a breakfast and you're having it catered, you know, get that invoice ahead of time from your restaurant so that you can have your treasurer write a check for that, because who wants to, you know, write $1,000 check and have to sit on it until you can get reimbursed. So, you know, if you use some foresight and planning ahead, you can avoid those situations like that. But yes, you can't, tax exempt certificates are only for PTA use by PTA payments. That's one of the things people sometimes don't understand about it. A lot of local businesses, you could kind of set up, you know, you take your tax, like Home Depot, you go in there, make a purchase once and share the tax exempt certificate. They'll keep that in their record. So you can just note that when you don't have to have it every time you go in. I think Walmart does that too. You can get a little card from them. So, you know, if there's a business that you use a lot, check with them, see if they, you know, you can just keep that on record so you're not having to bring the actual certificate each time. Just trying to think of little weird things that not people don't generally know until you get involved in dealing with the finances.
Target does that too now, Mary. You can set up a PTA account, tax exempt account, which is awesome because then you can just set it for drive up pickup. And Walmart and Target, you can have your treasurer place the order for pickup and then set anybody to pick it up and drive right through and pick it up. It's amazing.
Oh, nice. Yes, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, because especially these times, it's so nice. I have to say that's one good thing that's come out of the COVID situation is this ability to not have to actually go in the store sometimes to get it. It's nice to be able to just drive up and have them throw it in the back of your car and go, you know, save some time sometimes. So we can take something positive from this experience. But I think my biggest recommendation would be for new treasurers is to, you know, keep in mind that we want financial transparency, that anybody could come and want to look at your books and your membership to see what you're doing at any time. So you want to be sure, try to keep them up to date, try to keep them clear so that people can understand what's going on in there. And as much as you can, try to organize. You know, people organize differently. I have 2 different binders. One binder has all my forms and reimbursement forms and deposit forms. The other has some of the other stuff that, you know, my banking stuff and stuff like that. So whatever organization works. It doesn't have to be physical books anymore. You know, we use the Google Drive, so you can save your records in there. But again, it needs to make sense to the person that's coming behind you or your audit committee too. It needs to be clear and understandable, and set boundaries. You're not on call 24/7 to people to give them money. Stay on top of things. Don't let it get too far behind, so you're stressing yourself up to get caught up. And be sure you are providing your monthly reports or your general meeting reports and keeping your budget up to date so you know everyone knows where they are in their budget. That is a good question, Christina. That is typically up to your board to decide. So you can, or you can tell them up front, you know, at the beginning when you're setting your procedures that we will not be reimbursing for sales tax. So that's a decision you make as a board on whether or not to reimburse sales tax. That was her question. Should you reimburse the volunteer for sales tax?
I mean, you can always see it as they're using their time to go purchase those things for you and do the paperwork. So really, I mean, a personal opinion is reimburse them for what they've paid.
Yeah,
I
typically do. Yeah, I do. It's not usually that big a difference that it's really going to hurt you. I mean, if you're a unit that's really tightly tight finances, then that might be something you want to consider. It's not doing the sales tax. Also, when you're setting up your procedures, I just thought of this, you should set some time frames for things. Like, I believe in our standing rules, we have it set at 15 days, which seems a little unreasonable, but you should set some deadlines for, when people can submit reimbursements. Like if I purchase something today, then I shouldn't be able to, here in May, that wouldn't work. So I purchased something in September. I shouldn't now maybe turning in receipts for something that I purchased in September. So in our standing rules, we have reimbursement requests need to be submitted within 30 days of purchase, because it's not fair to the treasurer, because how are they, how can they keep an accurate tracking of what money has been spent if you're holding on to a receipt from 3 months ago? And then at that point, you have to decide how stringent you want to be about that, because at county, we say after 30 days, you try to turn a receipt, we say, sorry, you passed the deadline. Thank you for your donation to our organization. So we don't like to have to do that. We really don't do that very often, but it's reasonable to set a time frame for when things need to be submitted. I don't think 30 days out from purchase to submit your receipt is unreasonable. But on your end, then you need to be responsible and reasonable about when you get that reimbursement to them. Don't sit on reimbursements for another month. Maybe within a week or 2 weeks of submitting the receipt, they should be receiving their reimbursement. And along that line, what was I just thinking? Oh, cashing their checks. Try to remind them every meeting. I think I say, if you still haven't deposited one of the checks, your reimbursement check, please do that, because we need that money to go. I've had accounts where we've had an outstanding check that we've rolled over for like 2 years, and after 2 years we finally say, okay, this check is not going to get cashed. So it just messes with your accounting that when you have that outstanding check. So if you haven't already, go back to your board and say, you guys need to get your checks deposited, because we're getting ready to do the audit and we want all that cleared up. So, set reasonable timelines for things. Let's see, we had a problem with volunteers. We have to have to stop pay. Yeah. Becky says that they added a rule because people were losing checks that they have to pay for any stop check fees, which sounds reasonable to me, because it is expensive to pay that. And yeah, she has fewer lost checks now. And really, there's no reason for that, because can't you, for the most part, do it from your phone and take it, like right there, the treasurer hands you the check, endorse it, deposit it. You don't even have to go to the bank to do it. So good suggestion there, Becky, because you're right, those add up very quickly, and you don't want to waste your money on paying bank fees. Bank fees are ridiculous. They aggravate. I get aggravated with them, because we're a nonprofit organization. We're not out here making money to make money. We're not putting it in our pockets, and that the banks charge us these fees. I get worked up about it, but not much we can do. But yeah, that's a great idea. And there are forms, like we have different forms. If somebody wants to use the debit card to pay for something, there's a form that they need to fill out to get approval. Because with checks, we have the 2 signer checks and balances. Like there has to be 2 signatures on every check, so at least 2 people know this expense is being done. With debit cards, it gets a little trickier, because the person holding the debit card can go and use it. No one's requiring 2 signatures. So our form, we have to have pre-approval by at least 2 people. So before we use the debit card, at least 2 people know that it's going to be used and what it's being used for. So the checks and balances are a little harder on the electronic stuff. So you kind of have to put some protocols in place for that to keep track of everything. So any more questions or good ideas people have had? Because I'm always willing to learn new stuff.
If no one else does, I have a quick question, and I apologize if I missed it earlier. I got kicked out for a little bit. Interim budgeting and accounting for those funds that are spent in July.
Mhm.
How do you classify them for like reporting purposes on your end, Mary? Or, you know, do you have a category that just says interim spending, so it's on a separate?
I do. I'll show you what our budget looks like real quick. I'll pull that up.
Because I think this year we got into a, we had some interim spending from the prior year, but I think we just classified it as what it was. So those numbers are pulling into the current year budget.
Right.
If that makes sense. And so I'm thinking if we need to rethink how we classify those expenses.
Yeah, there are a couple of different thoughts on that. So I have our budget up here. So you can see we have the interim money from which was spent for this fiscal year, the 2020, because the 2021 interim, that's the blue at the bottom, technically is going to be coming out of next year's funds, because that's not until, well, actually that's not entirely true, because we just paid our registration and stuff, but like the hotel and that kind of stuff technically comes out of next year's funds. So some people say that after the interim money has been spent, you know, your like the green area, the money that we spent at the beginning of this year, that then you transfer that up into the category. So, you know, if we have training up higher up in the budget, that you can transfer those amounts up there. I like keeping them separate because I like knowing how much was spent for the summer so I can plan for what we need next summer. So you can do it that way. You can kind of show your two different entrants, because the green really is part of this budgeted year, but I like to have it where I can see what it was as opposed to sticking it in the regular year's budget. Then what we're planning for the upcoming interim. So we showed the front end and the back end.
Okay. So on your, when you go into a board meeting or a general meeting, you're still reporting those as interim spend.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you would have your carryover balance plus your interim, like say this for this year, we would have our carryover balance and an interim line item. And then for the next year's budget, our beginning balance would be the actual cash in the bank on July 1st.
Yes. Yep. Your carryover, yeah, would be up here on the income, which you actually are carrying forward.
Okay.
Up here in the income.
And then showing what our prior year interim was that we're bringing it in, because it's going to come out of this year's.
Right. Yeah. So on ours, it's the start blue at the bottom. Yep.
Yeah. And then what we're planning for next summer. Okay.
Yep. That way it's very open, and you know, you might have to explain it to them a little bit. Although quite honestly, and this is maybe a little pessimist, not very many people pay attention to the budget.
Yeah.
I've had very few people ever ask me questions. Half of my board don't even understand everything that's on the budget. Not enough people really pay attention to it, and they should be aware of what everything is and how where it's going and how it works. But people get, you know, like budget.
Yeah, it's not an interest.
I think I've only had in all my years. Yeah, in all my years of doing them at general meetings, I think I had a question one time from somebody who was not, you know, on the board or anything about a budget line item. So it's unfortunate, because really they should pay closer attention, because it's their money that you're spending, but it doesn't typically come up a lot. But it's good that your board members are paying attention.